You know that moment when your entire world shatters in front of 200 people? When the man you built an empire with walks into your 40th birthday party with another woman on his arm, not as a guest, but as his date. I watched my husband introduce his mistress to my mother, my friends, his business partners, calling her his special someone, right there, in the middle of my celebration. That was his first mistake. Humiliating me in front of everyone I love was his second. What I did next. That became the nightmare he'll never wake up from. If you've ever wanted to see a cheater get destroyed by his own arrogance, stay with me until the end. And if you love watching karma do her job, hit that like button and subscribe, because what you're about to hear is the sweetest revenge you'll ever witness. My name is Imani, and let me tell you how a millionaire lost everything on what should have been the happiest night of my life. 12 years. That's how long I'd been married to Donovan Pierce. 12 years of being the woman behind the man, the one who believed in him when he was just a struggling real estate agent with more dreams than dollars. I was the one working 2 jobs to keep us afloat while he chased deals that fell through. I was the one who postponed my own career, my own dreams, so he could build his empire. And build it, he did. Pierce Properties became one of the biggest real estate firms in the city, worth millions. But somewhere between the first million and the 10th, Donovan forgot who held his hand when he had nothing. I should have seen it coming. The late nights that turned into missing nights. The business trips that felt more like escapes. The way he stopped looking at me like I mattered and started looking at me like I was just part of the furniture in his big, beautiful life. But I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that successful men get busy. That's just how it is. I planned my 40th birthday party as a way to reconnect, to remind him of us. I booked the grand ballroom at the Ashford Hotel, invited 200 guests, his business associates, my family, our friends, people who'd watched us grow together. I spent weeks planning every detail, choosing the perfect gold dress, arranging the catering, the music, the flowers. Everything had to be perfect, because maybe, just maybe, this night would bring us back to who we used to be. The night of the party, I felt beautiful. My mother told me I was glowing. My best friend Tasha kept saying this was my year, my moment. I stood in that ballroom, surrounded by gold decorations and white roses, greeting guests, smiling until my cheeks hurt, checking my phone every 5 minutes. Donovan was late, 2 hours late. He'd been distant all week, claiming work emergencies, barely looking up from his phone when I tried to talk to him. But I pushed down that sick feeling in my stomach and kept smiling. He'll be here, I told myself. He wouldn't miss this. The room was full, champagne was flowing, and everyone kept asking where the man of the hour was. You know, Donovan, I'd say with a laugh that felt like glass in my throat, always closing one more deal. Then the ballroom doors opened. My heart jumped because finally he was here. Finally, we could start the celebration. But when I turned around and saw him, my breath caught in my chest. He wasn't alone. There was a woman on his arm, young, blonde, wearing a white dress that looked like a twisted mirror of my gold one. And the way he held her, the way he looked at her, I knew. In that single devastating moment, I knew my marriage was over. What I didn't know was that the real show was just beginning. The room didn't go quiet all at once. It was like a wave, conversations dying table by table as people noticed what I was seeing. Donovan walked through that ballroom like he owned it, which, let's be honest, his arrogance made him think he owned everything, with this woman practically glued to his side. She was young, maybe late 20s, with that kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. Her white dress caught the light with every step, and I realized with a sick twist in my stomach that we were almost matching, gold and white, wife and mistress, like he'd planned it that way. My cousin grabbed my arm, whispering, "Imani, what is happening?" But I couldn't answer, because I couldn't breathe. I watched him stop at my mother's table first. My mother, who loved him like a son, and I watched him introduce this woman, this stranger, as someone very important in his life. The look on my mother's face, that mixture of confusion and dawning horror, that's an image I'll carry forever. I don't remember walking toward him. My body just moved, operating on some autopilot while my brain tried to process what was happening. Tasha was behind me. I could hear her heels clicking fast on the marble floor, hear her saying my name, but it sounded underwater. I reached them just as he was laughing at something she said, his hand on the small of her back, the same way he used to touch me a lifetime ago. When he finally looked at me, there was no guilt in his eyes, no shame, just this cold, almost annoyed expression, like I was interrupting something. "Donovan," I said, and my voice sounded steadier than I felt. "What is this? Who is she?" He had the audacity to sigh, like I was being dramatic. "Imani, we need to talk. Not here. Not now." Not here? Not now? This man brought another woman to my birthday party and wanted to talk later? The woman, I didn't even know her name yet, turned to me with this smile that wasn't a smile. It was a smirk. "Hi," she said, her voice sugary, sweet, and poisonous. "I'm Sloane. You must be the wife. Don't make a scene, sweetie. This is hard enough already." Don't make a scene. She told me not to make a scene at my own birthday party while standing next to my husband, wearing a dress that mocked mine. My hands started shaking, and I clenched them into fists so tight my nails cut into my palms. Behind me, I could feel 200 pairs of eyes watching, phones coming out of pockets and purses. I could hear the whispers spreading like wildfire. "Is that his girlfriend? Oh my God, is this really happening? At her birthday party?" Tasha tried to step between us, her voice rising. "Donovan, you need to leave. Right now. You don't get to do this here." But he ignored her completely. He'd always been good at dismissing the people who didn't matter to him anymore, and apparently, that now included all of us. Then he did something I never could have predicted. He walked away from us, straight to the microphone at the front of the room. My microphone. The one I was supposed to use to thank everyone for coming, to celebrate 4 decades of life. He tapped it twice, and the feedback screech made everyone stop talking. "I'm sorry to interrupt the festivities," he said, his voice booming through the speakers, smooth and practiced like he was closing a business deal. "But I have some important news to share." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Sloane moved to stand beside him, her hand resting on her stomach in a gesture that made my blood run cold. And then my husband, the man I'd sacrificed everything for, looked directly at me and said the words that would change everything. "I've been unhappy in my marriage for years. I've tried to make it work, but sometimes you have to follow your heart. Sloane and I are in love, and I think it's time everyone knew the truth. I'm filing for divorce." The room exploded. I don't remember crossing the room. 1 second I was standing frozen in place. The next, my hand connected with his face so hard, the sound echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. The crack of skin on skin silenced every voice, every gasp, every whisper. Donovan's head snapped to the side, and when he looked back at me, there was a red handprint blooming across his cheek. Good. I wanted him to feel a fraction of the pain he'd just inflicted on me. "You brought your whore to my birthday party?" My voice came out raw, torn from somewhere deep inside me that I didn't know existed. "In front of my mother, my family. You stood up there and humiliated me in front of 200 people, and you think you get to just announce it like a business merger?" The tears came then, hot and furious, streaming down my face, while 12 years of suppressed pain, of swallowed doubts, of ignored red flags, all came pouring out. "I gave you everything. I worked 2 jobs so you could chase your dreams. I put my life on hold so you could build your empire. And this is how you repay me?" Donovan had the nerve, the absolute audacity to look embarrassed. Not for what he'd done, but for me. For my reaction. He straightened his jacket, touched his reddening cheek, and said in this condescending tone that made me want to hit him again, "You're making a fool of yourself, Imani. This is exactly why we don't work anymore. You're so emotional, so dramatic. Can't you see I'm trying to be honest with you? Honest? He thought blindsiding me at my own party was honesty? Tasha lunged forward, and it took two of our friends to hold her back. She was screaming things I can't repeat, things about his manhood and what she'd like to do with a butter knife. Other people were shouting too, my family, real friends, people who actually loved me. But Donovan just stood there looking annoyed, like we were all overreacting to something perfectly reasonable. That's when Sloane made her fatal mistake. She stepped forward, placed her manicured hand on Donovan's arm like she was calming a child, and looked at me with fake pity in her eyes. Look, I know this is hard for you to hear, but he never really loved you. He told me the truth. You were convenient, a diversity hire for his image. The words hung in the air like poison gas. A diversity hire. She said it so casually, like it was a known fact, like my entire marriage had been a business transaction to make him look progressive. Marrying you opened doors for him with certain clients, she continued, and I swear she was enjoying this. It made him look inclusive, made his company more appealing to a diverse market. But come on, you had to know. A man like Donovan, with his background, his success. Did you really think it was about love? The gasps from the crowd were sharp and immediate. Even people who'd been standing neutral, probably thinking this was just a messy divorce, now looked at her with disgust. My uncle started shouting. One of Donovan's own business partners called him a racist. But I just stood there, my heart turning to ice in my chest. Because here's the thing about rock bottom. When you hit it, there's nowhere to go but up. And I was done going down. Donovan must have seen something change in my face because he signaled to security. Two men in black suits started walking toward me, and I realized what was about to happen. He was going to have me thrown out of my own birthday party, out of the room I'd paid for, decorated, filled with people who came for me. Escort Mrs. Pierce out, please, Donovan said, his voice cold and final. She's clearly too upset to be here. The security guards reached for my arms, and that's when something inside me snapped. Not broke, snapped into place. Because I suddenly remembered something Donovan had forgotten. He wasn't the only one with power in this room. And the cards I held? They were about to burn his entire world down. I stopped crying. Just like that, the tears dried up, and I felt this calm wash over me that I can only describe as clarity. The security guards had their hands on my arms, ready to walk me out like I was some crazy ex-wife making a scene. But I smiled. Actually smiled. And that smile made them pause because it wasn't the smile of a broken woman. It was the smile of someone who'd been holding aces the whole time. Take your hands off me, I said quietly, and something in my voice made them step back. I wiped my face, straightened my gold dress, lifted my chin, and walked back to that microphone. Donovan tried to block me, but Tasha, God bless her, stuck her leg out and he stumbled. The crowd was dead silent now, everyone's phones out, recording every second. I tapped the microphone twice, just like he had. You want to make announcements, Donovan? Then let me make one too. His face went pale. Actually lost color right there in front of everyone, and I knew he was wondering what I could possibly say that would matter now. But he didn't try to stop me, probably because he thought I had nothing. Poor, emotional Imani with her tears and her hurt feelings. What could she do? For the past 3 months, I began, my voice steady and clear, I've been consulting with some very expensive lawyers. Because unlike my husband, I don't make important decisions impulsively. See, I've known about Sloane since August. I hired a private investigator the first time I smelled her perfume on his shirts. The room erupted in murmurs. Donovan's eyes went wide. Sloane's smirk finally disappeared. And while Donovan was busy planning this little performance tonight, I was busy making copies. Copies of bank statements, copies of company records, copies of some very interesting financial documents that show Pierce Properties isn't quite as legitimate as it appears. I nodded to Tasha, who pulled out a remote control and aimed it at the projection screen behind me, the screen we'd set up to show photos from my life. Instead, bank statements appeared, transfer records, tax documents with numbers that didn't quite add up. You see, what Donovan forgot is that I'm not just his wife. I'm a 50% silent partner in Pierce Properties. Has been since year 3, when he needed my signature on loan documents, which means I have legal access to everything. I watched his face turn from pale to gray. These documents show systematic fraud, embezzlement from client accounts, tax evasion, money laundering through shell companies. The IRS is going to love these. I already sent them copies this morning. Donovan lurched forward, but security, the same security he'd called on me, now held him back. He was shouting, calling me insane, threatening lawsuits. But his voice sounded desperate now, not powerful. But I wasn't done, not even close. I turned to Sloane, who'd been slowly backing toward the exit. And you. Let's talk about you, Sloane. I clicked the remote again. A wedding photo appeared on the screen. Sloane in a white dress, a different white dress, kissing a dark-haired man. This is Brett Hutchinson, your husband. You've been married for 4 years. Sloane's face went white as the dress in her wedding photo. You're lying, she screamed, but her voice cracked. Oh, I don't lie, sweetheart. I investigate. Brett here has been very worried about you. All those girls' trips to Miami, the weekend yoga retreats. He had no idea you were actually shacked up in hotel rooms with my soon-to-be ex-husband. I smiled at the crowd. Brett, honey, are you here? A man stood up in the middle of the ballroom, tall, muscular, and absolutely furious. Sloane made a sound like a wounded animal. She started babbling, trying to explain, reaching for Brett. But he stepped back like she was toxic. You told me you were visiting your sick mother, he said, his voice shaking with rage. For 6 months, you told me your mother was dying. The room erupted in chaos. People were shouting, gasping, and every phone was capturing Sloane's complete meltdown as she tried to spin a web of lies that kept contradicting itself. But I still had one more card to play, and this one was going to hurt the most. I clicked the remote again, and medical documents appeared on the screen. Oh, and Donovan? That baby Sloane's been hinting about all night? The one she keeps touching her stomach for? I looked directly at him, watched his face as the realization dawned. She's not pregnant. Never was. These are medical records from last week, proving she's been on birth control the entire time you've known her. It was just a manipulation tactic to lock you down. Congratulations, you threw away 12 years of marriage for a liar who was using you for your money while staying married to someone else. Sloane tried to run then, actually tried to push through the crowd to escape, but Brett blocked her path. The scene that unfolded was almost poetic. Her begging, him refusing to even look at her, security finally escorting both her and Donovan toward the exit while they turned on each other like wolves. I clicked the remote one last time, and emails appeared. Donovan's emails. And for the grand finale, let me share some messages my husband sent to his business partners. Here's one where he calls his black clients diversity quotas, but necessary for optics. Here's another where he brags about overcharging Latino families because they don't know any better. And this gem, where he tells his mistress that marrying me was the smartest business decision he ever made because it neutralized the racism accusations and opened up markets. The horror on people's faces was absolute. Several of his business partners stood up and walked out. Others were already on their phones, probably calling lawyers to distance themselves from the disaster that was Pierce Properties. Donovan was screaming now, completely unhinged, lunging toward me, while security struggled to contain him. You can't do this! I'll sue you! I'll destroy you! But his threats were empty, and everyone in that room knew it. I walked up to him one last time, looked him dead in the eyes, and spoke quietly enough that only he could hear. You already destroyed yourself, Donovan. I just made sure everyone got to watch. Then I turned to the crowd, handed the microphone to Tasha, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "The party's over for them, but for me, it's just beginning." I walked out of that ballroom with my head high while behind me, police officers, yes, actual police that my lawyer had tipped off, entered to discuss the fraud charges with my now ex-husband. The last thing I heard was Sloane screaming at Donovan that this was all his fault, and him screaming back that she was a lying snake. Karma wasn't just knocking. She'd kicked the door down and brought receipts. 3 months later, my life looks nothing like it did that night, and I mean that in the best possible way. Donovan lost everything. Pierce Properties collapsed within weeks once the fraud investigation went public. His business partners abandoned him, his assets were frozen, and he's currently facing federal charges that could put him away for years. Last I heard, he's living in a studio apartment in the bad part of town, working retail to pay his legal fees. Sloane? Brett divorced her so fast her head spun, and he took everything in their settlement because of the adultery clause in their prenup. She's been blacklisted from every social circle we used to run in. Turns out nobody wants to associate with a woman who destroyed 2 marriages and lied about being pregnant. She works as a receptionist now at some car dealership, and according to my sources, she's miserable. Alone. Exactly what she deserves. As for me, I took my 50% stake in Pierce Properties and started my own real estate firm, Imani Ellis Properties. I took back my maiden name, and we focus on helping first-time homebuyers, especially Black and brown families who've been taken advantage of by people like Donovan. Business is thriving. I'm making more money than I ever did being Mrs. Pierce, and more importantly, I'm doing work that actually matters. I'm helping people achieve their dreams instead of propping up someone else's empire. My mother tells me I look younger now, lighter somehow, like I've shed a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. And she's right. For 12 years, I was trying to be the perfect wife for a man who saw me as a business asset. Now I'm just Imani, and that's more than enough. I ran into Donovan once, about 6 weeks after everything happened. I was leaving my office, my beautiful new office with my name on the door, and he was walking down the street in a retail uniform. Our eyes met, and I saw him open his mouth, probably to apologize or beg or try to explain. But I didn't stop, didn't slow down, didn't even acknowledge him beyond that brief moment of eye contact, because he doesn't deserve my words, my time, or my energy. He made his choices, and now he gets to live with them. The last I saw of him in my rearview mirror, he was just standing there on the sidewalk, watching me drive away in the car that used to be ours, but is now mine. Everything is mine now, my success, my happiness, my future, and it feels incredible. Last week, I threw myself the birthday party I actually deserved. Nothing like that disaster at the Ashford. This was intimate, genuine, filled with people who actually love me for who I am, not what I can do for them. Tasha gave a toast that made everyone cry happy tears. "To Imani," she said, raising her glass. The woman who turned her worst night into her greatest comeback. The woman who proved that the best revenge isn't just getting even, it's getting everything. We laughed, we cried, we celebrated not just my birthday, but my freedom, my rebirth. And as I looked around that room at the faces of people who genuinely cared about me, I realized something profound. Donovan didn't just lose a wife that night. He lost someone who would have stood by him through anything, who believed in him when no one else did, who loved him unconditionally. And what did he get instead? A fraud investigation, a collapsed business, and the memory of the woman who outsmarted him at every turn. Here's what I learned through all of this, and I want you to really hear me. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Don't make excuses. Don't rationalize. Don't convince yourself that things will get better. And when someone tries to humiliate you, to break you down in front of the world, don't just get mad. Get smart. Get strategic. Get even. But most importantly, get free. Because the best revenge isn't destroying them, it's watching them destroy themselves while you build something so much better than what you had before. They wanted to make my 40th birthday the worst day of my life. Instead, they made it my liberation day. The day I stopped being someone's wife and became my own woman. The day I stopped settling for being undervalued and started knowing my worth. Donovan thought he was walking away from me that night. But the truth is, I'm the one who walked away. And I've never looked back. If this story lit a fire in you, if you believe karma is real, if you've ever wanted to see a cheater get exactly what they deserve, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel because I've got more stories of revenge, justice, and karma coming your way. Real stories about real people who refused to be victims and became victors instead. And drop a comment telling me what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have exposed them? Would you have walked away quietly? I want to hear your thoughts. Thank you for listening to my story, for staying until the end, and for believing that sometimes the good guys, or in this case, the good women, really do win. I'll see you in the next one.